Have you ever found yourself pouring time, energy, and love into helping someone, only to feel like your efforts are being drained into a black hole of thanklessness? We've all been there. You lend a hand to a friend, a colleague, or even a family member who seems to be in need, but instead of gratitude or progress, you're left feeling frustrated, exhausted, and even questioning your own judgment. Why is it that some people seem to reject the very lifeline you're offering them? It's a tough pill to swallow, but the truth is, not everyone wants to be helped. Sometimes your well-intentioned support might be feeding into a cycle of dependency, manipulation, or even denial. This can leave you feeling trapped in a loop where no matter how much effort you put in, the results are the same: unappreciated, unnoticed, and unrewarded. But what if I told you it's not just about them, it's about you? In this video, we're diving deep into an eye-opening lesson drawn from modern stoicism: 10 types of people you should not help. Yes, you heard that right. Helping others is a noble act, but Stoic wisdom reminds us that it's equally important to guard our own energy, focus on what we can control, and let go of what we cannot. And sometimes, the most powerful, liberating choice you can make is to step back. We'll be exploring how to recognize these 10 types of people, why they drain us emotionally, and most importantly, how you can reclaim your energy by understanding who's truly worth helping. By the end of this video, you'll see generosity in a whole new light, one that's empowering and grounded in wisdom. Stay with me through the end, because the 10th type of person might just completely shift how you think about your relationships. And hey, if you've ever felt trapped in the cycle of trying to fix someone else's problems, I encourage you to drop a comment below right now. I choose my peace. Let's start a conversation about healthy boundaries and emotional self-preservation. So what are you waiting for? Grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's take this journey together. You won't want to miss what's coming, because understanding these 10 types of people can radically change the way you approach your relationships and help you unlock a life filled with more peace, purpose, and clarity. 1. The immutable, stuck in their comfort zone. Let's kick off with the first type of person you should be cautious about helping: the immutable, someone who refuses to change no matter how many opportunities are handed to them. We all know someone like this, right? You could be showing them a clear path out of their struggles, practically handing them a lifeline, and yet they cling to their comfort zone like it's a safety blanket. Maybe it's a friend, a co-worker, or even a family member who's been stuck in the same routine, complaining about the same problems, but never actually taking any steps to improve their situation. Imagine this: you're on a sinking ship, and you've spotted an emergency raft. You call out to your fellow passengers, urging them to grab a life jacket and head to safety. But instead of following your lead, some passengers just sit there, grumbling about how cold and wet the water is. They refuse to take action, making excuses for why they can't do something different. It's frustrating, right? This is the immutable person. A person who would rather stay seated in their discomfort than face the uncertainty of change. It's natural to want to help these people, especially when you care about them. You offer advice, resources, maybe even solutions on a silver platter. But despite your best efforts, they remain unmoved, firmly seated in their self-made prison. And here's the kicker: their refusal to change is not a reflection of your ability to help. It's about them. They are choosing to stay stuck, and that choice is theirs alone. Stoicism teaches us a powerful lesson here. We are not responsible for other people's actions, only our own reactions. As Epictetus wisely put it, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You can offer all the help in the world, but if someone is determined to resist, that's not a failure on your part. What can you do when faced with an immutable person? The first and most important step is to set clear boundaries. Compassion is valuable, but only when it doesn't come at the cost of your own well-being. You have to decide how much time and energy you are willing to invest, knowing that your efforts may not lead to the change you hope for. Stoic wisdom teaches us to focus on what we can control. And in this case, that's not the other person's choices. It's your own response. Helping someone who refuses to help themselves can easily turn into a source of emotional exhaustion. So, it's essential to protect your own energy. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is step back and let them figure it out on their own. 2. The manipulators, emotional vampires draining your energy. Now let's move on to the second type of person you should be wary of helping, the manipulator, also known as the emotional vampire. These are the people who feed off your kindness, draining your energy as if it were an endless supply. You've probably encountered a manipulator before, maybe without even realizing it at first. They come to you with endless problems, seeking your advice, your sympathy, and your time. But no matter what you give, it's never enough. Instead of being uplifted by your efforts, they leave you feeling depleted, used, and often guilty. Imagine for a second that your kindness is a beautiful garden, flourishing with the right amount of care and attention. Now picture someone trampling through that garden, plucking flowers at will, but never watering the soil. That's the manipulator, a person who takes and takes, yet gives nothing in return. They exploit your kindness like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet, and before you know it, you're left drained, with nothing to show for all the energy you've poured into them. These individuals are masters at making you feel like you're the problem when you set boundaries. They twist situations, using guilt as a tool to get what they want. Maybe it's a friend who always seems to be in crisis, needing your attention at the most inconvenient times. Or a coworker who constantly asks for your help but never returns the favor. They might say things like, "I thought you cared about me," or "I guess I'll just have to figure it out on my own," subtly manipulating you into giving them what they want, whether it's your time, energy, or even money. Here's the thing, Stoicism teaches us to protect our inner peace. If helping someone consistently leaves you feeling worse, it's time to reevaluate that relationship. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If your thoughts are constantly occupied with the manipulator's needs, you're giving them power over your emotional state, and that's a dangerous place to be. So, how can you recognize a manipulator before they drain you dry? One of the biggest red flags is their use of guilt to keep you hooked. They'll often frame their needs as more urgent than anything else in your life, making you feel like a bad person for not dropping everything to help them. Another sign is their constant crisis mode. There's always something wrong, and you always seem to be the one solving it. Ask yourself, are their problems real or are they manufactured to keep you close? Here's where Stoic wisdom comes in handy. You are not responsible for their problems. Your generosity, your compassion, these are beautiful qualities, but they are yours to give, not something others are entitled to. Stoicism teaches us to value our own energy and time. Just because someone is skilled at exploiting your kindness doesn't mean you have to keep offering it. The most powerful thing you can say to a manipulator is a simple, firm no. Saying no might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've been conditioned to feel responsible for other people's emotions. But remember, your peace is priceless. The manipulator thrives on pushing your boundaries, but you have the power to draw the line. As Stoicism reminds us, we can't control others, but we can control how much we allow them to influence our lives. And don't fall into the trap of thinking that by constantly helping, you're doing them a favor. Manipulators aren't seeking solutions, they're seeking attention, validation, and an emotional crutch. They don't want to fix their problems because without them they lose their hold on you. That's why, no matter how much advice you give, no matter how many times you help them out of a jam, they'll be right back with another crisis next week. 3. The victim, stuck in the blame game. Now, let's dive into the third type of person you need to be cautious of helping, the victim. These are the people who, no matter what happens in life, always find someone or something else to blame for their problems. In their world, nothing is ever their fault. They're constantly pointing fingers at their job, their friends, their family, or even the universe itself, believing that life has conspired against them. And here's the thing. If you're not careful, you might find yourself becoming the emotional dumping ground for their endless complaints. Picture this. You're sitting down with a friend, and instead of a normal conversation, it turns into a monologue of everything that's wrong in their life. They talk about how their boss doesn't recognize their brilliance, how their friends never support them, how they always seem to be unlucky in love. It's a never-ending list of grievances, but what's missing from the conversation? Any sense of personal responsibility. Here's the key insight from Stoicism. Personal responsibility is at the heart of growth. As Marcus Aurelius wisely put it, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The victim, however, seems to have skipped this essential lesson. They're more comfortable dwelling in their problems because it's easier to stay in the blame game than to confront the hard truth that they might need to change something about themselves. When you help someone who plays the role of the victim, you risk being dragged into their narrative. They're not looking for solutions because solutions would require them to take action, and taking action would mean stepping out of the comfortable role they've carved out for themselves. Instead, they're looking for a sympathetic ear, someone to validate their belief that life is unfair to them. And before you know it, you're caught in their emotional storm, feeling exhausted and powerless. But Stoicism teaches us something profound here. We are responsible for our own reactions, not for the actions of others. The victim might believe they're at the mercy of external forces, but you don't have to buy into their worldview. You can offer support, sure, but you are not obligated to fix their life. In fact, you can't. The only person who can change their circumstances is them, and until they're ready to recognize that, all your help will do is enable their inaction. What's the best way to deal with a victim? First, draw clear boundaries. There's a fine line between being a supportive friend and being someone's emotional dumping ground. Let them know that while you care about them, you won't allow yourself to be pulled into their cycle of negativity. Offer empathy, but don't get dragged down by their endless complaints. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and that's your own mental and emotional well-being. Another powerful approach is to encourage them to reflect on their situation without offering solutions. Ask open-ended questions that make them think, like, what do you think you could do to change this situation? Or, how do you feel about taking a step toward resolving this? This forces them to shift from blaming others to considering their own role in their problems. But be careful not to take on their burdens. The goal is to guide them to self-awareness, not to fix their life for them. The narcissist, the attention seeker who's never satisfied. Let's move on to the fourth type of person you need to be cautious about helping, the narcissist. These individuals are some of the most draining people you will ever encounter. They live in a world that revolves entirely around them, constantly seeking validation, attention, and admiration. No matter how much you give, it's never enough for them because they're not interested in genuine connection or solutions. They just want to be the center of every conversation and situation. Imagine being on a never-ending carousel, spinning around the narcissist's need for attention without ever getting off the ride. Every interaction you have with them seems to be about their achievements, their problems, their needs. And the moment you try to share something about yourself or offer a solution to their supposed troubles, they quickly dismiss it and steer the conversation back to them. It's not that they want your help, they want your attention. A narcissist is like a bucket with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much attention or validation you pour into them, it never fills up. They crave more and more, but they aren't capable of giving anything in return. It's all about them, and if you're not careful, you'll end up exhausted, constantly trying to meet their insatiable demands while getting nothing back. So, what does Stoicism have to say about dealing with a narcissist? Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." The lesson here is simple. Don't get caught up trying to change someone who isn't interested in growth. Narcissists aren't looking for self-improvement. They're looking for an audience. Trying to help a narcissist is a losing battle because they're not interested in solutions. They're only interested in being admired. When dealing with a narcissist, the first thing you need to do is set firm boundaries. Narcissists will often push your limits, expecting you to drop everything to cater to their needs. You must make it clear that you won't be drawn into their endless loop of attention-seeking behavior. Boundaries are essential because without them, the narcissist will continue to drain your time and energy, always demanding more, but never offering anything in return. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and the truth is, you can't control a narcissist's need for attention. What you can control is how much of your energy you allow them to take. By setting boundaries, you protect yourself from being consumed by their self-centeredness. Don't let them guilt you into thinking that their needs are more important than your peace of mind. Another thing to remember is that narcissists thrive on admiration, not advice. Even when they seem to be seeking help, they're often just looking for validation. You might offer thoughtful, practical solutions to their problems, but they'll likely dismiss or ignore them. They don't want to improve. They want you to keep feeding their ego. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you can change them. 5. The time wasters, disrespecting your most precious resource. Now let's talk about the 5th type of person you need to be careful about helping, the time waster. This person doesn't necessarily drain you emotionally, but they take something even more valuable, your time. Time, as we all know, is the one resource we can never get back. Once it's gone for good. And yet some people treat your time as if it's unlimited, as if your schedule revolves around their whims, their last-minute requests, or their lack of planning. We've all had experiences with time wasters. Maybe it's a colleague who shows up unannounced when you're trying to meet a deadline, chatting away about trivial matters. Or perhaps it's a friend who constantly cancels plans at the last minute, showing little regard for your schedule. It might even be that family member who expects you to drop everything to run errands for them, with no respect for what you had planned. Helping a time waster can feel like trying to fill a bucket with holes. No matter how much time you give them, it's never enough, and they will keep coming back, expecting more of your day. They're not malicious, but they are inconsiderate, and if you're not careful, they will rob you of the precious time you could be using to focus on your own goals, growth, or simply rest. Here's where Stoicism can offer some valuable guidance. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, famously said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The lesson here is simple. Stop wasting your time on things that don't matter. And that includes people who don't respect your time. One of the most important skills you can develop in life is the ability to say no. Time wasters will keep coming back as long as you let them. If you don't set clear boundaries, they'll treat your time as if it's an endless buffet, where they can take as much as they like without offering anything in return. Learning to say no isn't about being rude or unkind. It's about valuing your own time and protecting it from being squandered by others. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and you have control over how you spend your time. If someone is constantly wasting it, you need to take action. The first step is to set clear boundaries. Let them know when you are and aren't available. For instance, If a colleague keeps interrupting you with non-urgent matters, you might say, "I'm in the middle of something right now, but I'd be happy to discuss this later when I have more time." This shows that you respect your time, and it teaches them to do the same. Another key aspect of dealing with time wasters is learning to prioritize your own needs and schedule. Imagine your day as a carefully planted garden. You've set aside time for work, time for relaxation, and time for important personal projects. Now imagine a time waster coming in and trampling all over that garden, destroying the careful balance you've created. Stoicism encourages us to be mindful of where we invest our energy. Protect your schedule like you would protect that garden. Nurture the things that matter to you, and don't allow others to trample over them. 6. The deaf one, the listener. Who never listens now? Let's talk about the 6th type of person you should avoid helping. The deaf one. This is the person who, on the surface, seems eager for your advice, nodding along and giving all the signs that they are paying attention. But when it comes time to act on your suggestions, they do absolutely nothing. No matter how many times you offer guidance, share wisdom, or point them in the right direction, it's like talking to a brick wall. Imagine a situation where someone you care about comes to you repeatedly with the same problem. Maybe it's a friend who's stuck in a bad relationship, or a co-worker who's constantly complaining about their job. Each time they come to you, you listen patiently, offer thoughtful advice, and give them the tools they need to improve their situation. And each time they nod, say, "That makes sense." And then, nothing changes. A week later, they're back with the same issue, and the cycle begins again. This is the deaf one, someone who hears your advice but never truly listens to it. Helping someone like this can be exhausting because no matter how much energy you invest in trying to guide them, they remain stuck in the same place. It's like trying to plant seeds in barren soil, hoping for a garden to bloom, but no matter how much water or sunlight you give, nothing grows. Stoicism has a powerful lesson for us here. As Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." The deaf one doesn't apply the advice because on some level they believe they don't need to change. They may agree with your suggestions in the moment, but they're not truly open to growth. Their inaction reveals a deeper issue. They aren't ready to take responsibility for their own life. One of the core principles of Stoicism is focusing on what is within your control. And here's the hard truth. You can't control whether someone else listens to your advice. You can offer all the wisdom in the world, but if the deaf one isn't ready to change, your words will fall on deaf ears. Stoicism teaches us that we must conserve our energy for things and people who are receptive to growth. If someone consistently ignores your advice, it's time to stop pouring your energy into them. So, how do you deal with a deaf one? The first step is to recognize the pattern. Pay attention to whether the person is truly making any progress after your conversations, or if they're just coming to you for comfort, validation, or a temporary solution to their emotional distress. If you find that they aren't taking action, you need to set boundaries. 7. The dramatic person, the one who thrives on chaos. Let's move on to the 7th type of person you should be cautious about helping, the dramatic person. This is someone who turns every small inconvenience into a full-blown catastrophe. To them, life is one long soap opera, and they seem to thrive in the chaos they create. Everything is a crisis. Every bad day is a disaster, and no matter what happens, they always manage to escalate the situation to an extreme. You've probably met someone like this. Maybe it's a friend who calls you every time something minor goes wrong, like a late bus or a small argument with a coworker. And by the time they've finished their story, it sounds like the end of the world. They speak in absolutes. Everything is terrible. Everyone is against them, and nothing ever goes right. Helping a dramatic person can feel like being caught in a storm. No matter how much you try to calm them, their emotional chaos continues to swirl around, threatening to pull you in. The problem with the dramatic person is that they aren't looking for solutions. They're looking for an audience. They feed off the attention their drama brings, and if you're not careful, you can become entangled in their endless emotional roller coaster. Every time you help them with one problem, another arises, and the cycle never ends. It's exhausting, and it can leave you feeling overwhelmed and emotionally drained. Stoicism offers an important lesson here. Don't get caught up in things you cannot control, especially other people's emotional storms. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The dramatic person thrives on dragging others into their emotional chaos, but you don't have to play a role in their drama. Instead, focus on protecting your own peace of mind. So, how do you handle someone who constantly creates drama? The first step is to set boundaries. When you notice that every interaction with this person leaves you feeling drained, it's a sign that you need to create some emotional distance. You don't have to be rude or dismissive, but you do need to be firm. If they're trying to pull you into their latest crisis, you can say something like, "I'm sorry you're going through that, but I don't have the emotional bandwidth to take this on right now." This way, you're acknowledging their feelings without allowing their drama to consume you. 8. The ungrateful, the taker, who never gives back. Next up is the 8th type of person you should be cautious about helping, the ungrateful. This is the person who, no matter how much you do for them, never shows appreciation. They take your kindness, your time, and your efforts as if they are owed to them, and they never stop to acknowledge or express gratitude. Helping an ungrateful person can leave you feeling used, disrespected and drained because you're pouring so much of yourself into someone who doesn't value what you're giving. Imagine this scenario. You go out of your way to assist a friend in need. Maybe you help them move, lend them money, or provide emotional support during a tough time. But instead of a simple "thank you," what do you get? Silence, or worse, complaints that you didn't do enough or didn't do it the way they wanted. This is the essence of the ungrateful person, someone who expects help but never shows appreciation for it. Helping the ungrateful is like trying to water a plant that refuses to bloom. No matter how much care and effort you give, it never grows, and you're left wondering why you even bothered in the first place. Ungrateful people are emotional black holes. They'll take everything you offer without giving anything back in return, and you'll be left feeling depleted. Stoicism teaches us the importance of gratitude. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." Gratitude is a core virtue in Stoic philosophy because it keeps us grounded, helps us appreciate the good in our lives, and balances our emotions. But the ungrateful person seems to have missed this lesson. They live with a sense of entitlement, expecting more while appreciating less. Helping an ungrateful person can be incredibly frustrating. You might find yourself thinking, "Why do I keep helping when it's never appreciated?" And the truth is, you don't have to keep helping someone who doesn't value your efforts. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and while you can't control the behavior of the ungrateful, you can control how much of your energy you give to them. One of the most important things you can do when dealing with an ungrateful person is to set boundaries. Just because someone asks for help doesn't mean you're obligated to give it, especially if they don't appreciate it. You have the right to protect your emotional energy and time. If someone consistently takes from you without showing gratitude, it's a sign that they don't value your contributions, and you deserve to have your kindness respected. 9. The dependent, the perpetual burden carrier. Now, let's dive into the 9th type of person you should be cautious about helping, the dependent. This person goes through life like they're carrying an invisible backpack full of problems, constantly looking for someone else to take the weight off their shoulders. While it's natural for all of us to need help from time to time, the dependent makes this their permanent state of being. Instead of taking responsibility for their own life, they rely heavily on others to solve even the smallest of issues. Helping the dependent can quickly turn into a never-ending cycle. They'll come to you with one problem after another, asking for advice or support, and while they may act grateful in the moment, they never actually learn to stand on their own 2 feet. It's as if they've become so accustomed to relying on others that they've forgotten how to navigate their own lives. And the more you help, the more they lean on you, creating an unbalanced, draining dynamic. Picture this. You're at a party, and the conversation starts off light-hearted, maybe about the weather or current events. But before you know it, the dependent has cornered you, turning a casual chat into a heavy discussion about their life problems. It's not just one thing, it's everything. Their indecision about dinner, their struggles at work, their personal issues. And as they unload all of this onto you, they expect you not just to listen, but to fix it all for them. The dependent thrives on this dynamic because it allows them to avoid taking responsibility for their own decisions. Instead of looking inward for solutions, they're constantly outsourcing their problems to those around them. This can be exhausting, especially if you found yourself in the role of their go-to problem solver. But here's the hard truth that Stoicism teaches us. You are not responsible for carrying someone else's load. As much as you may want to help, as compassionate as you might be, there comes a point where helping someone too much becomes a form of enabling. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The dependent hasn't realized this. They believe that their problems are for others to fix, and if you continue stepping in, you reinforce that belief. So how do you handle the dependent without getting completely drained? Setting boundaries is the first and most crucial step. You need to make it clear that while you're happy to offer support, you are not their personal problem solver. It's okay to say, "I can listen, but I think you should make this decision on your own," or, "What do you think would be the best solution?" By redirecting the responsibility back to them, you encourage them to start taking ownership of their own problems.